Welcome.
Welcome.
Welcome to First Parish, Unitarian Universalists of Arlington.
We choose.
We choose.
We choose to be
A liberal religious community.
Welcoming.
Welcoming to all.
We encourage each other
on our spiritual journeys.
Support one another
through the changes in our lives.
And challenge the excesses
and injustices of our time.
Called to love.
To love.
To love.
And upheld by joy.
We live our faith.
Prepare yourself as we begin to pray together. First with spoken words, then with 2 minutes of shared silence. Take a moment to let go, to give yourself a pause. Spirit of life, give us the moments for small wonders around us. Tonight's unseen new moon. The windless quiet of large, wet snowflakes slowly falling. The child catching snowflakes on their tongue. Alert us to the language of the powerful, the we and the are that narrows and excludes, instead of an open invitation of all you all. A home for some rather than a shelter for all. Looking backward through a falsely remembered sepia nostalgia instead of looking forward to an aspiration. Open our ears to the grievances. Help us create spaces for hearing and learning where we begin to understand one another. Give us the courage to sit in discomfort, to disagree, and still respect. Give us the wisdom to know that the answer to some questions is simply, I don't know. Spirit of life, gather us together in the silence we are about to share.
Hear these words shared at the vigil a week ago Friday here at First Parish for Renee Nicole Good. Poem, The Low Road, by Marge, Piercy. What can they do to you? Whatever they want. They can set you up, they can bust you, they can break your fingers, they can burn your brain with electricity, blur you with drugs till you can't walk, can't remember. They can take your child, wall up your lover. They can do anything you can't stop them from doing. How can you stop them? Alone. You can fight, you can refuse, you can take what revenge you can, but they will roll over you. But two people fighting back to back can cut through a mob. A snake dancing file can break a cordon. An army can meet an army. Two people can keep each other sane, can give support, conviction, love, massage, hope. Three people are a delegation, a committee, a wedge. With four, you can play bridge, start an organization. With six, you can rent a whole house, eat pie for dinner with no seconds, and hold a fundraising party. A dozen make a demonstration. 100 fill a hall. 1,000 have solidarity and your own newsletter. 10,000 power and your own paper. 100,000 your own media. 10 million your own country. It goes on one at a time. It starts when you care to act, It starts when you do it again and they said no. It starts when you say we and know who you mean. Each day you mean one more.
Good morning. I was a little worried I was going to be too political, but after Bill and Joanne, I think I don't have to worry about that. So some of you may have heard a few weeks ago, a few other people and I, including a Unitarian minister actually, tried to deliver food and blankets and feminine care products to the immigrants who are incarcerated in the Burlington ICE office. And we were not allowed in, we were not successful. And in fact, we were arrested for misdemeanor trespass and disturbing the peace, which was kind of ironic to me. I thought they were the ones disturbing the peace. But the action was successful in the sense that we drew a lot of attention to, both through traditional media and social media, to what is happening in that building, where over 35 people are incarcerated in a single cement room with one toilet, no beds, no blankets, just concrete shelves. They sleep on the shelves or sleep on the floor. So the condition there is abysmal, and it's good that we were able to draw attention to it. Now, if my mother were alive, I know what she would say. She would say, Eric, you know, I know that you're bothered by that, but why did you have to get arrested? And the reason is that I cannot continue cooperating with the system that is happening in this country right now. I can't cooperate with a system where people are snatched off the street, where our educational and scientific structures are being decimated, where democracy itself is under attack. I just can't do that. Now, if I asked some people, well, how could all that happen in this country? Some people might say, well, Donald Trump. But I actually don't think that that's the right answer. He's just one guy. He depends on cooperation from the people in the White House, from people in Washington, and in fact, from all of us. The only way that this oppression can continue is with our cooperation, and the only way it will stop is when enough people stop their cooperation. Unfortunately, the default state, just business as usual, means cooperating. I felt, and I know a lot of other people feel as well, that I had a responsibility to myself, my kids, my community, and the whole world to withhold my cooperation so that we are not put back to the year 1950, or is it 1590? So even though I know I'm going to be okay, I'm a white, retired guy in the suburbs, and my friends are going to be okay, and the people that they know are mostly going to be okay. But Renee Good is not okay. And Rumela Ozturk is not okay. And the 35 people who are in the concrete room in Burlington, they are not okay. So on this holiday, where we remember Dr. King, we need to remember what he wrote from the Burlington jail, which is, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. I'll say that again. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Now, non-cooperation is not easy. But the context in which I made that decision is that I feel like this might be the most important time of my life. This might be the time when my decisions and my actions are most important in the world. I often hear people say, "Why are more people not upset?" And I'm really upset. So I felt like I needed to do something about it. I chose to do something that risked arrest. But there are many ways to non-cooperate. You might risk arrest, but you also might take your money out of Citizens Bank, which is financing the large prisons where ICE immigrants are being kept. You might walk out of your place of work this Friday in solidarity with the people of Minneapolis, where the federal government is basically declaring war on the city. If you think that this might be the most important time of your life, I hope you'll think about how you can withhold your cooperation. And in fact, UU Mass Action, which is our statewide advocacy organization, is holding a Zoom workshop on January 29th on exactly that topic. So hopefully you'll get notices about that in your email. Now, this can be scary stuff, and nobody should go through it alone. The first step is getting together with people who you trust and talking about what you can do to withhold cooperation, what makes sense in your life. I hope that you will have those conversations, and then I look forward to hearing your stories of non-cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. You all may have noticed the new graphic behind me. It is the depiction of our Unitarian Universalist values. We have 6 values: justice, equity, transformation, pluralism, interdependence, and generosity. And our 7th value, love, is at the center. Love at the center. This is not simply a fluffy theological assertion. It is a fierce commitment, a commitment to care for each other, to recognize the divine in one another. This commitment shapes how we move in the world, what we fight for. As Unitarian Universalists, we believe that each and every person has inherent worth and dignity. There's no asterisk to that sentence. No caveat about race, borders, or paperwork. Now, I ask you to travel back in time with me to 5.5 years ago, and I will never forget this particular Saturday morning. It was May 2nd of 2020. At the time, I lived in Somerville, outside Union Square. We were at the height of COVID lockdown. But that particular morning, things felt okay for me. I was puttering around and tidying. The sun was shining. And then the phone rang. And I could tell from the caller ID it was a call from the Bristol County Correctional Facility, the immigration unit of that prison. For 3 years, I volunteered with Boston Immigration Justice Accompaniment Network, called Bijan, sometimes referred to as Beyond. And I answered a hotline that folks in immigration jail could call. So on that May morning in 2020, I frantically took notes on the nearest scrap of paper I could find. The moment was not about responding perfectly or fearlessly, but responding with courage. Because here's the thing, I wasn't very good at this role. I'm not great on the phone. My Spanish isn't good enough to navigate multilingual conversations, and I'd constantly be juggling something, so I was always distracted when I was answering this hotline. But in that moment, none of that really mattered because the phone was ringing, and it was my job to answer it. And I could hear the terror in the caller's voice. In the background, I could hear screaming. The caller was raising his voice to be heard. He wanted to make sure that folks on the outside knew what was happening, that ICE agents at Bristol had attacked people the night before. I took down notes as fast as I could. Just over a week ago, on Friday night, 300 people gathered at First Parish's Meeting House lawn, just right out there. We gathered to mourn the murder of Renee Nicole Good, the 37-year-old poet, wife, mother, who was shot and killed by an ICE agent in Minneapolis, Minnesota. We gathered for Renee and for all victims of ICE's violence, victims that are not white and often go unnamed by mainstream media, victims whose names and stories don't make headlines. 32 people died in ICE custody in 2025. Renee was murdered on Wednesday. On Thursday morning, the idea for this vigil came together. And within 30 hours, members of the Social Justice Committee and our Defending Democracy Working Group pulled together an interfaith vigil. This vigil included voices from the Human Rights Commission, from the town's Methodist and congregational congregations, a mosque in Boston. Representative Dave Rogers attended. State Senator Cindy Friedman spoke. During the vigil, Joanne Pohl was walking around and welcoming folks, especially those she didn't know. And one couple around Joanne's age approached the vigil, and she welcomed them as they arrived at the corner. Joanne asked if they were from Arlington, and they replied that they were neighbors, and they had walked over. The man said, "I haven't been to something like this since the Vietnam years. My wife said she was going to the vigil, and I told her I wanted to come along. I'm glad we're here." We are at an inflection point, or as Eric said, a hinge moment, one that feels to him like the most important year of his life. It is not the first moment of inflection, it is not the last, but it is a hinge moment nonetheless. And I am horrified, and I am scared, and I have more questions than I have answers, more fear than I have courage. And yet, as a person of faith, a person who believes in these values, I have to act, and I know I'm not alone. I don't see any other option. It simultaneously feels very complicated and quite simple. Earlier this week, local activists reported that 3 fleets of unmarked SUVs arrived at the Burlington ICE facility. And Boston Mayor Michelle Wu told WBUR this week that Boston is yet again preparing for a possible ICE surge in the city of Boston and across the state of Massachusetts. Just as the federal government has targeted Minneapolis, it's possible that they will target Massachusetts next. There was a surge here in May and September, and it seems like it might happen again. I am horrified, and I am scared. Nicole Presley, a UUA staff member, writes, "Fear is not accidental. The chaos and cruelty are meant to distract us and push us inward, convincing us that our individual actions are too small to matter. It is true that a single phone call to an elected official may feel insignificant. A single prayer for compassion and healing may feel fragile in the face of legacies of harm. And on their own, these acts may feel painfully small. But none of us are meant to carry this alone. When our actions are woven together across congregations, across movements and communities, they become something else entirely, a shared moral force capable of interrupting cruelty and insisting on love and liberation. She says we must share in it all, the heartache, the frustration, the hope, and the collective action that binds our souls to one another and moves us to manifest the world we long for. The truth is, there is a mass awakening underway. The other night here at the meeting house, I ran into a local Arlington activist, one I've gotten to know over the years. We'll call her Jane. Jane had attended the vigil on our front lawn and had been grateful for the space to gather. She shared, though, with me that she had done a pre-vigil vigil. As she spoke of this pre-vigil vigil, I wondered if this was a newfangled spiritual practice. I was excited to hear about this pre-vigil vigil. But no, she said it wasn't a new spiritual practice, simply she and her husband had gotten the date wrong. And they had come to First Parish on Thursday night instead of Friday. They stood on the lawn with their signs, and they slowly realized that perhaps no one else was coming. Eventually, they realized their mistake, but they were already here, so they stayed. Soon, a passerby stopped and stood next to Jane. So now there were 3 of them. And then more people walked by and stopped and asked what they were doing. And Jane got to talk to her neighbors about ICE and the legacy of Renee Good and the ways that we can resist. Even an accidental pre-vigil vigil can make a difference. The next day, Jane and her husband came back, and this time they were surrounded by 300 people. Showing up matters, talking to our neighbors matters, creating networks of resistance, refusing to cooperate makes a difference. How many of you have gone to a standout at the ICE office in Burlington? There are standouts every Wednesday, Thursday, and Saturday from 11 to 1, and they are growing. This past Wednesday, 930 people showed up. If you want to learn more, look at the hands that were raised. Raise your hands if you've been. Talk to one of us. First Parish member Stephanie, mother of Gina, who lit the chalice, she and I were emailing this week as we reflected on last Friday's vigil. And I share her words with permission. She says that she got into an argument with a friend of hers who thinks there's no point in attending protests. And Stephanie told her friend, it's about community care. It's about establishing that the community is willing to put its feet on the ground, to come out, to say their values out loud and demand that they will be followed. Sharing our values out loud matters. And it's not just about showing up, though I think that's important, but it's also about creating networks of community care and strategic resistance. This is something First Parish has done well, and it's something we can keep getting better at. In this crucial moment, how might any of us live our values? How might you respond by living your faith? As soon as I hung up the phone on that May morning, I took a deep breath. I steadied myself and looked at my notes about the physical assault and the pepper spray and the dogs. And then I reached out to leaders within Beyond. My role was a very small part of a larger whole. I passed on the harrowing account that I had heard, and it helped corroborate other accounts. And all of that aided the advocates and lawyers that were working to change conditions at Bristol. My role, one that I wasn't very good at, was a very small part of a larger whole. And yet it was important. The men held at that immigration center worked hard to organize. There were efforts organizing within the walls and outside of them, and they were working to draw attention to the conditions in which they were held and advocated for them to change. In December of 2020, then Attorney General Maura Healey found that the Bristol County Sheriff, Thomas Hodgson, and his staff had violated the civil rights of the immigrant detainees during that violent altercation in May. And then in 2021, ICE stopped working out of Bristol. It is no longer a place where immigrants are held in detention. In 2021, many of the men who had worked so hard to see that day had already been deported. But one of them, One of them in particular had already been deported, but he called via WhatsApp to talk to some of the leaders of Beyond when the news broke. He was back in his country of origin, and yet he still celebrated. "We did it," he said. "It didn't make a difference for us, but it will for others." All of us have a piece of the puzzle, a small part of a larger whole. First Parish demands that love is at the center. Proclaiming this, preaching this, living this is our religious mandate. There is no asterisk, no caveat. May we go boldly, creating the world we yearn for. May it be so, and amen.